by giving legal advice on topics that matter.
Make it legal or it's illegal
based on the number of months that your employer has paid for us.
From being a foundling to being an adopted daughter of the late Fernando Poe Jr. and Susan Rosas, Senator Grace Poe's story is known to many. Last week, Senator Poe's search for her biological parents or relatives turned out to be futile. Senator Poe even admitted that all the tests conducted to her possible relatives only generated negative results. One positive result could have been her key in erasing numerous doubts surrounding her bid for presidency. One of which is her being not a natural-born citizen, a key requirement for the position she's running for. Poe's camp asked the Senate Electoral Tribunal for an extension on her case. Apart from her case at the SET, Poe also faces 4 disqualification cases in Comelec. In cases like Senator Poe, how vital is the result of a DNA test? And what legal cases can DNA testing be used or accepted as evidence? What are the laws governing the usage of DNA examinations? And what are the processes involved in DNA testing?
You are watching Legal Help Desk on CNN Philippines, where we give you practical legal advice on relevant issues. I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno. One of the hottest stories of last week includes Senator Grace Poe's revelation that a number of people they've done DNA testing with didn't match. How will it affect her ongoing case at the Senate Electoral Tribunal and her 2016 election plans for the presidency? Let's find out. Joining us here in the studio is Maricris Yamazaki, Manager of DNA Genes Philippines and DNA Japan, and Attorney DJ Jimenez, a practicing lawyer and a professor at the University of Santo Tomas. Hi, Attorney DJ and Maricris. Thank you for joining us. Let's go straight to, again, the hottest topic last week and this week. Senator Grace Poe's DNA results turned out to be negative for potential relatives in Canada. How crucial were these DNA results in terms of her, one, keeping her Senate seat, and second, her bid for the presidency?
In my opinion, it will all depend on how the Senate Electoral Tribunal will interpret the requirements for natural-born citizen, because there are 2 schools of thought, diba? The first one is that under the 1954 UN Convention of relating to stateless persons, a foundling is presumed to be citizen of the place where such a child is found. If the lawyers of Poe can convince the SET that this should be the applicable theory, so even without the DNA results, she can be presumed to be natural born. However, if the SET will say that yes, that is a principle of international law, but we have our own constitution which clearly defines what a natural born citizen is. And considering that this is a requirement for public office, then the interpretation should be resolved strictly against the person claiming the qualification. If that will be the interpretation of the SET, then Senator Grace Poe will have a problem. Not to mention the issue on the 10-year residency.
And that's a separate
yes.
issue pa. But when we were talking about DNA test results, you mentioned earlier, it's a requirement to be, one, a senator or a president, that you have to be a natural-born citizen. And in our Constitution, it's strictly defined that it's by blood.
Yes.
And I guess for a lot of people, it sounds weird, diba? Like, you look Filipino, you were found in the Philippines, and yet you're not natural-born. But I guess to give our viewers a perspective, in the U.S., it's the opposite. Once you're born in the U.S., even if by blood or genetics you're not Caucasian American, you're still American.
Yes.
So an American, for instance, who is born outside of the United States may not be a natural-born American citizen. That's
something to that
other,
effect.
Yeah, something to that effect. So in this case, how serious will the implications be if Senator Grace Poe is not able to show any lineage with blood relation with any Filipino, if the Senate Electoral Tribunal says, based on the definition of a natural-born citizen under the Constitution, she does not qualify as a natural-born citizen, is she in danger of losing her Senate seat?
That would be possible because the requirement strictly is you have to be natural-born. So she really has a problem if that would be the position to be taken by the SET.
And Marie Chris, let's go to the practical aspects. So we'll have some candidates who might encounter the same issues in the future. How accessible are DNA testing centers to one, even to the ordinary people?
Yes. Like for private sector, they can come to us. And first, to start, for the processing, we ask them a few questions. We narrow down the question and ask their family tree to give them the appropriate DNA testing. Because you could just say, sister, or for instance, you and attorney Karen, if they want to prove your siblings, you don't know if just you and attorney. We need, like, the father is already deceased. I have here an example for this one here. Can you see?
Show, yes.
Yes. This is the father, and this is the mother, and this is the mother. We have two mother and one father. So this is the child, and this is the child as well. They share both parents, but different mothers. Then we're asking if we can prove if they're siblings, right? Do you think if we done the DNA test, we can prove that they are siblings?
Is it possible? Especially since you have deceased parents,
Yes,
which means you cannot get any samples from them.
Yes, right. Since we inherit one allele to the mother and one allele to the father. So it's XX and XY, right? So if the mother, for instance, we don't have the mother, this one, the two, yes, they're unknown disease. So we cannot just test this both. So the father has a brother. We can ask the brother to participate for the testing here, to the testing.
Okay.
Yes.
And is it expensive to
For
have
us,
this type of test?
for non-legal DNA tests, it's 12,000 pesos, one father, one child, and one mother.
And you have to get samples from all three.
Yes, it is a requirement to get sample. If the mother, of course, we understand there are circumstances, problems. Even the mother will not participate, it's okay. But if the DNA data is insufficient, we ask the mother to participate.
Attorney DJ, before we go in commercial break, in case the relatives, supposed relatives, turn out to be a positive match, is that sufficient for Grace Poe to then qualify as a senator and then possibly as a president?
Well, that would establish that her lineage is Filipino. So I suppose that would settle that issue of natural born as defined under the Constitution. Somehow, there is a presumption in her favor. Although the Supreme Court, in the rules on DNA evidence, provides a set of rules. No? For example, if the result is negative, that is conclusive evidence that there's no paternity relationship. If it is if it's below 99.99%, that would only be a corroborative evidence to prove filiation. And if it's 99.99% and above, it's a disputable presumption.
Wow.
But that is insofar as paternity is concerned. Here, the only issue is the fact that she is a natural-born Filipino. So I suppose that would suffice.
Later, we'll go deeper into the issue of paternity tests and other situations. But for now, we'll have to take a short break. Legal Help Desk will return after these messages. You are still watching Legal Help Desk with Marie Chris Yamazaki and Attorney DJ Jimenez. And earlier, we went into the issue of paternity tests. So, Attorney DJ, if, for instance, you're a man, you don't know that you have a child, and then suddenly your ex-girlfriend goes to you and says that you have a child with me, parang kinakabahan talaga yung itsura mo, oh no, is the situation? Biglang lalabas dito. And then, she's asking for child support. Can a man demand that a paternity test first be conducted?
Okay, let's put it in its proper perspective. When you seek a DNA testing, it's like you're fishing for evidence. In a decision of the Supreme Court of Louisiana, which our own Supreme Court adopted, in as much as this is similar to search and seizure, the court said that we should also be protected with unreasonable search and seizure. Such being the case, any person cannot just demand for a DNA testing to any Tom, Dick, and Harry na, oy, ano ko yan, ganito yan. Hindi pwedeng ganon. Preliminary to the grant of DNA testing is the requirement of prima facie case or probable cause.
And that goes into even if it's a civil case,
Even if it's a
demanding
civil
for
case,
support.
yes. What is this probable cause or prima facie case? It's simply the probability that there is paternity, there is affiliation. So you have to, at the outset, show previous relationship that possibly
That there would
yes.
be a possibility that that's
yes.
your child.
But it cannot be solely on the basis, I met this guy, we had a one-night stand, and I believe that he is the father of my child. I can demand, no.
So in a rape case, if there's a complainant that filed a rape case against an accused, that complainant can also demand a paternity test in order to
yes,
prove that.
of course, that's different. That's a criminal prosecution. So I do believe that the fact of the existence of rape is, if there's an allegation that you were raped, that would meet the requirement of probable cause.
So do you still need court authority to demand from the
yes.
accused to submit himself to a paternity test?
Yes, although in the rule on DNA evidence, you also have this post-conviction testing. So even after conviction, there can be a DNA testing, and if the person convicted is shown to be innocent on the basis of the DNA result, that person can go free.
But if it's the reverse, it's the guy demanding or the man demanding a paternity test to be conducted with his alleged child, can this person make that a precondition to giving support to the child?
The requirement for support is premised on the relationship. So if the relationship is already established, then support will follow. So I think anybody can, in that situation, can demand for a DNA testing, and the circumstances would show that that is a probable cause or a prima facie case.
Which brings us to Marie Chris. So in that case, how would be what's the procedure for a person to get a DNA test or a paternity test?
Yes, for the procedure for paternity test, for instance, what you're saying, child support. We asked our client to seek advice first for the legal, for their attorneys. Then attorneys will come to us and ask for legal DNA test. The requirements for this is we need the consent form signed by the participant and IDs. And if the newborn after birth or just infant, we need to see the birth certificate. If there's no birth certificate, perhaps we can see certification that really prove that the child is hers before we start the procedure. We are really strict on checking IDs for verification, because you don't know, you just get the child somewhere. We're very strict on that.
So it's also one of the things that you look out for to make sure all the necessary
requirements,
documents,
all
authorization
complete.
are
Yes,
there.
right.
And how reliable are the results? So if a paternity test shows positive. Is that 100% reliable?
Yes, reliable. In Japan, our laboratory, court, prosecution is with us. They are testing. So it means they believe in us because they entrusted their cases with us. So it's reliable, and we're implementing Japan quality. As you know, Japan, we don't, well, as you call, everyone knows, sometimes you can pay or whatever.
But
We
in
don't-
Japan,
No,
you're
no,
very
no.
sure that
No.
as soon as you submit,
No.
whatever comes out in the laboratory, that's the only result that
Yes,
you will.
yes, we're strict
give.
and we follow Japanese law and international standard.
What about confidentiality? Can you demand confidentiality from a legal perspective, Attorney DJ?
Under the rule on DNA evidence, the confidentiality rule applies, in which case you can only get the result through a court order, and there are specific persons to whom the result may be given to. And in connection with what Ma'am said earlier, in the Philippines, of course, it is not enough that you have the result. When you go to trial, you also have to show the manner as to how the bases were collected, how it was processed, the competence of the agency that undertook the testing, among other things.
So it helps to have
So
a
it is
reputable
yes,
facility.
it is similar to introducing object evidence, which has to really be credible.
And for you, Marie Chris, in your testing facility, you keep the results confidential.
Of course, definitely.
And now we have some questions from our viewers. We have one from Dillian. What are the things needed from both parties in a DNA test? Marie Chris, I think you can answer this.
Yeah, for both parties, of course, both parents should willing to take the test. Then we have consent letter, consent form. They should sign it, and IDs for verification.
Marie Chris, when you said submission to a test, do you have to give a hair sample, blood, skin?
We don't take blood.
Okay,
Yes,
I think that's a
it's
relief
skin.
to a lot of
For
people afraid
hair,
of needles.
everybody is mistaken. For hair, you need a hair with bulb or root follicle, because if you just cut it, it can only test for mitochondria, and mitochondria is only for women.
And it has to be taken out by an expert. Is there a way to store it properly?
Actually, it's really hard, especially for kids. You have to take like 10 pieces of hair with hair root or follicle. So we advise them just to take the swab. It's easy and painless.
And it's time sensitive? Do you have to transmit the results, the samples right away?
Yeah, after we get the sample, it's really sent to Japan to avoid contamination, because it's hot weather here in the Philippines. And also the shipping is the problem.
Wow, very good insights.
Yeah.
Our next question is from
elaborate.
Luis. My adopted parents passed away many years ago. I want to find my biological parents. I have a strong feeling that one of our relatives is one of them. However, upon asking that person, he does not want to undergo DNA testing with me. What should I do?
Subject again to the requirement of prima facie case, he needs to establish that there is a possibility of filiation. Otherwise, the court cannot just order anybody to submit
Undergo
themselves to DNA testing.
And in this case, Attorney DJ, what would you say are some situational or corroborative evidence, letters?
If we follow the if we follow the provisions of the family code, then of course the birth certificate, if there is a written acknowledgement, those are pieces of evidence to establish the relationship. Pictures, the continuous use of the surname, and many other documents or circumstances.
Okay, we have another question from Isabel. Can you retake a DNA test, or was there a case wherein the first test did not match but the second one did? Or is it safe to say that all DNA test results are conclusive? Mary Chris?
Okay. What you say about the rematch and the first test is math, then the second test is not math. Absolutely not. We don't have any case happen like that before. Usually, we advise our client, especially for home DNA collection, to have a third party to witness and to oversee the sample collection and the handling. They may swap or they don't have, they might not do the sampling, collection properly. So to avoid mistake, avoid swapping, we ask them to a witness or a third party.
Mary Chris, what would be your advice to viewers out there who might potentially submit themselves to DNA or paternity tests, or who might need it in the future?
Well, you can call us in DNA Genes PH and seek more information. We may ask you a confidential question, but that's we needed. We need to know your family tree to give you appropriate DNA testing.
And is it expensive, generally?
In DNA PH, for non-legal is 12,000 pesos, including mother, with or without mother.
Per person?
No, all in one child and one father, one mother is 12,000. For legal DNA testing is 18,800.
What about Attorney DJ? What would be your advice to those who might need DNA or paternity tests in the future?
Well, they have to prepare. Aside from, they should not rely on the DNA alone, because if the judge will not grant the DNA testing, then they have to prove additional other forms of evidence. Anyway, before this concept of DNA came into effect in the past, there are other, yes, we are not relying on DNA alone. There are other ways to prove the filiation.
And I like your tip. You have to really get the consent of the other person,
Yes.
because this is like fishing for evidence
Of
as well.
course.
If you have any questions about our topic for tonight, you may post these at our Facebook and Twitter pages. Thank you again, Mary Chris,
Thank you very
from
much.
DNA PH, and Attorney DJ Jimenez. Join me again next Tuesday as I discuss your legal rights. I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno. By giving legal advice on topics that matter.
Make it legal or it's legal, based on the number of months that your employer has paid for.